Who is the CEO?
A dangerous voice that wielded power thundered the boardroom doors. Opened 30 executives, rose simultaneously, not out of courtesy, out of fear. The man who walked through those doors had not built his empire with handshakes. He had built it with silence and consequences. Kang Minyi, Mafia boss, business titan. The kind of power Seoul spoke about in whispers. An 8-month acquisition deal waited on that table, billions. Prepared, delivered. His, or so he walked in believing. He moved toward the head of the table, then stopped. The executive chair, at the head of the room, was already occupied. It turned slowly, one revolution, unhurried, deliberate. His expression cracked for the first time in years. Zuri, he called with a voice that spelt regret and shocks. The same woman he humiliated 3 years ago on their wedding day. He replaced her with another bride. 3 years, 3 years of silence, 3 years of choosing to believe that she had disappeared into the life he and his family had designed for her. She crossed one leg over the other, looked directly into his eyes, then smiled. One word, soft, devastating: nightmare. If you have ever been written off by the very people who owed you loyalty, subscribe, because what Zuri does next was never about revenge. It was always about becoming something they could never take back. Minyi stared. You are the CEO. She tilted her head slightly. No. A document slid across the table. Toward him, smooth, unhurried. I am the owner. Chief Financial Officer snatched the file. His face turned the color of ash. This cannot be right. Zuri replied. Company was acquired 72 hours ago. He swallowed hard. At 3 times market value. Every person in the room turned toward her because what she had just done wasn't business. It was architecture. 8 months of Minyi's planning, dismantled in 3 days. Every route now led through her. Every signature required her approval. You spent billions. I did, to get my attention. The faintest smile. No, she leaned forward just slightly. I spent billions to take your future. Silence. Not the polite kind, the violent kind, the kind where careers end and dynasties fracture. Then his phone vibrated against the table. One glance downward, his eyes narrowed. Gold prices. His secondary empire had just absorbed a significant strike. Not fatal, intentional. A message dressed as market movement. Zuri watched his face, processed the reaction. The rumors were confirmed. The gold empire still existed, still running, still dangerous, good, destroying a man who had already fallen wasn't the goal. This was. The meeting ended in controlled chaos. Lawyers argued in overlapping voices. Investors demanded clarity. Executives formed urgent clusters near the windows. Zuri walked out through the center of it. Unhurried, unaffected, smiling. Hours later, the mansion gates opened. She stepped inside. The house was warm, quiet. Then she stopped. A small boy, her son, curled against the chest of a young man on the couch, both of them asleep. A blanket. A softly playing television. A half-eaten plate on the side table. 23-year-old Jun, the same employee who had once stood quietly in a hallway 3 years ago, while everyone else turned their back on her. He had brought soup, said nothing, just stayed. Her son's small hand gripped Jun's shirt without releasing. The sight reached somewhere beneath the empire. the strategy, beneath the armor for a single moment. She wasn't a billionaire. She wasn't a survivor. She was just a mother standing in a doorway, grateful for something she couldn't price. Jun opened one eye. You won. I won. His smile arrived immediately. I knew you would. Then the front door opened. Behind her, a bodyguard, urgent, off rhythm. He held a tablet toward her. Without speaking, her smile dissolved. The screen showed a scandal, already global, already trending, photographs, anonymous accusations, fabricated evidence, media articles, multiplying by the minute. By the time she finished reading, 300,000 people believed she was running criminal operations. Investors were already moving. Board members were already calling. Television panels were already speculating. Jun sat upright. This was coordinated. She already knew. Nobody moves this fast without months of preparation. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. A distorted voice. Calculated. Unhurried, your empire. A pause that lasted exactly 3 seconds. Or your son. Line disconnected. The tablet slipped from her hand, not from shock, from the specific cold that only a mother knows, the kind that arrives when the threat has a face you cannot yet see. Jun was already standing. What happened? She looked toward the sleeping child, then back at Jun. They know about my son. Room went completely silent. Jun's expression shifted into something she had never seen on him before. Not concern. Trolled fury. Triple the security. You think security stops people like this? No. His voice became very calm, very precise. It buys time, and time, Zuri already understood, was the most dangerous currency. For security doubled that night, then tripled before morning. Cameras replaced cameras, guards replaced guards. The perimeter around her son became a fortress. But fortresses only protect the body. They cannot protect the mind. And by sunrise, the scandal had grown teeth. New leaks, new accusations, new anonymous witnesses appearing from nowhere, each one timed perfectly, each one released just as the previous story began dying. Someone was not trying to destroy her quickly. They were trying to exhaust her slowly, keep the wound open, keep her bleeding, keep the board unsettled. The emergency meeting that morning lasted 4 hours. Investors demanded her resignation. Board members demanded explanations. One director suggested a voluntary suspension pending investigation. Zuri gave them numbers instead, evidence, facts, proof of manipulation. The stock stabilized, barely, then another leak appeared before the meeting even ended. The timing was surgical, too surgical. As executives filed out, Jun stayed behind. He studied her face, the way people do when they are building towards something difficult. You haven't slept. Sleep. When I find who's doing this, you think it's Minnie. She turned toward the city skyline. The question deserved more than an instinctive answer. Don't know. Jun hesitated, then he spoke, with the measured weight of someone choosing words carefully. If he's the only person enough to fix this, silence stretched, maybe. He's the one created it. Sentence landed cleanly and settled the way a dangerous idea does when it is also reasonable. Minnie had the power, the influence, the connections, the silence on the day of her public destruction. 3 years of unexplained choices behind him. The thought was poisonous, and it tasted entirely logical. That evening, Zuri sat alone, reviewing financial reports, cross-referencing names, following money trails backward, then forward, then sideways, looking for a seam, looking for the place where the architecture of this attack had been stitched together. Then one transaction stopped her, buried beneath 4 layers of shell companies connected to a consortium that had recently moved against one of Minyi's secondary holdings. She stared at it. If Minyi was directing this entire campaign against her, why was someone simultaneously attacking him? Her phone vibrated. Her private investigator urgent. She opened the message, 3 photographs. Men she did not recognize, vehicles she could not trace, weapons she recognized immediately, professional mercenaries. The message beneath the photographs was 5 words, planned, hit on. Minyi, Kang, tonight. Attached, she leaned back slowly. Let the information settle. This was the simplest decision imaginable. Do nothing. Let the night take its course. No courts. No confrontation. No negotiation. No more battles. Permanent silence. Everything she had wanted 3 years ago. When she sat on a cold floor in a storage room in a wine-stained wedding dress, while someone else spoke her vows, she looked at the framed photograph on her desk, her son smiling, holding a toy airplane, eyes trusting the world completely. The decision arrived, not as strategy, not as calculation, as a mother's absolute certainty. A father who failed was still a father. Her son would ask questions, one day, and she would not build his future on a grave she chose. She stood. Prepare the vehicles. Her security chief blinked. Ma'am, we're moving. 40 minutes later, rain hammered the abandoned industrial district at the edge of the city. The streets looked empty. They were not armed men. Occupied 3 rooftops, vehicles blocked every exit route silently. The trap had already been assembled with patience. Inside a warehouse, Minyi reviewed transfer documents with 2 trusted men. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He ignored it. The lights died. Without warning, every instinct in his body activated simultaneously. Move. Gunfire erupted. Glass shattered across the floor. Bullets punctured steel walls. His men returned fire immediately. The attackers pressed forward, disciplined, precise. Same professionals who had done this before. Then another convoy arrived from the eastern approach. Black vehicles, doors flying open. Additional armed personnel flooding the perimeter. The attackers hesitated, looked at each other. Who was this? The answer stepped from the lead vehicle into the rain. Zuri. Coat soaked, expression absolute. One of Minyi's men stared at her in open disbelief. What is she doing here? Nobody could answer, including Minyi. The firefight ended in less than 4 minutes. Attackers retreated into the darkness. Vehicles vanished. Silence returned, broken only by rain. Minyi stepped forward, water running down his face. His eyes found hers across the distance. Neither moved. You saved me. No. Her voice carried no warmth, no softness, no invitation. I saved my son. The words landed harder than anything in the warehouse that night. She stepped closer, just close enough to be heard, and no closer. Mistake this for affection. One more step. I did it for him. Then she turned, walked back toward her vehicle. She left him, standing in the rain with water on his face, and something older than anger in his expression. Regret, the specific kind that only arrives when you understand exactly what you destroyed and exactly when it became irreversible. The next morning, the story exploded everywhere. Not the assassination attempt. Nobody knew about that. What spread was the rescue. Grainy photographs, night operations, armed convoys. The headlines assembled themselves within hours. Business queen, linked to criminal network. Secret night operation exposed. Evidence of organized activity emerges. Zuri stared at the screen. Someone had been waiting, in the rain, with cameras. Waiting to reframe everything she did, waiting to turn her protection into her prosecution. Jun arrived moments later, outraged. "This is insane." "No," she replied without raising her voice. "It's intelligent." His expression shifted. "Every move I make becomes evidence." She set the tablet down. "Someone is not trying to destroy me. They are directing me." Clenched both fists. "We'll find them," she nodded. But something felt deeply wrong. Not the scandal, not the media, not the attacks. Something closer. The attacks were escalating. But they weren't accelerating toward a finish. They were stretching. Controlled, paced like someone who understood that. Sustained pressure breaks. What sudden force cannot, almost like a storyteller, directing emotion, directing reaction, directing her. Across the city, that same morning, Minyi was unraveling his own problem. The assassination attempt had exposed a critical fracture. Someone knew his movements, his schedules, his location that night. Information that lived only inside a very small circle. His security director entered the office, visibly nervous. "We found something." "What?" "A financial trail." Minyi looked up slowly. "Leading where?" The director swallowed. "We don't have a name yet." Answer visibly irritated him. He stood and moved toward the window. 3 years of telling himself that silence had been the correct choice. 3 years of pretending. The hole in certain rooms of his life was architectural, not absence. Then a memory surfaced without permission. The day his family presented the ultimatum: destroy her completely, erase her reputation, bankrupt every asset she had built, crush her so thoroughly that she would never rise again. Instead, he had signed a different document, one that redirected criminal liability toward himself, one that cost him $3 billion privately, one that fractured 3 powerful family alliances, one that absorbed the full weight of a disaster she never knew existed. He never told her, never explained, never defended himself once, because explanations felt weak, and weakness was the one thing his world punished without mercy. Now, standing at the window, he understood something. He had spent 3 years refusing to examine. Silence had not been strength. Silence had been the greater weakness. His phone vibrated. A message. One line, no signature. "Meet me at the estate." His pulse shifted immediately, because he knew that address. The estate. The place where things between them had been real before strategy entered the room. He arrived just before sunset. The gates opened slowly. She was already in the garden, standing still, not smiling, not hostile, simply present, like a question he had been failing to answer for 3 years. For the first time since their reunion, there was no boardroom, no audience, no performance, just 2 people. And the space between them. Minyi looked around slowly. The estate was unchanged. Same trees, same pathways, same lake at the edge of the property. Catching the last light, "You bought this place." Zuri nodded once. I did. Why? She didn't answer immediately. He almost smiled, not warmly, just a man recognizing a familiar silence. If you are not obsessed with me. His eyes moved across the garden, toward the lake, toward the terrace, then back to her. Why? Here, his voice dropped. Stars were here, a pause. The wind was here. His eyes settled. You were here. Something crossed her face. Not love, not longing, grief, the specific grief of someone who survived something that should have been beautiful. Woman who stood here 3 years ago is gone. The sentence hit him harder than he showed. I know. She shook her head. Don't. Her voice stayed calm. Calm was always more dangerous than anger 3 years ago. I believed loyalty was protection. Step toward him. I believed. Love was enough. Step. I believed. Silence meant safety. Her eyes locked onto his. I was wrong about all of it. Minnie had no defense. Because she was not accusing him. She was simply telling the truth. And the truth required no argument. She handed him a file. He opened it. His expression changed degrees. Financial crimes, bribery, political interference, layered money trails. Enough material to end him completely. Prison. Destroyed empire, erased legacy. His eyes rose slowly. You haven't submitted this. Why? For the first time that evening, the armor around her eyes thinned, just slightly, because our son carried that shame. For the rest of his life, neither spoke, because there was no response available. Motherhood had defeated everything else in the room again. The woman he had failed was still protecting him, not for him, for the child between them. Then her phone vibrated. She answered immediately. The investigator's voice was controlled, but urgent. Ma'am, what happened? We found another connection. In the financial trail, her eyes narrowed. To who? A beat. Jun. Everything stopped. She thought she had misheard. Explain. Several shell companies linked to the attacks, directly to businesses, registered under his name. Expression hardened into something unreadable. Minnie immediately noticed the change. What is it? She ended the call, stood completely still. Jun, the young man who had brought soup to a hallway 3 years ago, the young man who slept on her couch with her son, curled against his chest, the young man her child trusted without reservation. No, someone was framing him. That was the only explanation that made sense. That had to be it. But doubt had entered the room. And doubt never leaves the same way it arrives. That night, she reviewed every report herself, every transaction, every timestamp, every communication thread, hour after hour, looking for the frame-up, looking for the third hand behind this. Instead, a pattern formed, not conclusive, not direct, but there, consistent, uncomfortable. Are you watching a woman piece together a betrayal she never saw coming? Drop a comment below right now. Tell her she is not alone, because women who speak up for each other in the comments are the reason this story keeps going. And you will not believe what she finds next. The next morning, Jun arrived carrying breakfast. The way he always did, her son launched himself across the room into his arms, laughing, completely trusting. The sight made the previous night's investigation feel like a fever dream. Jun smiled at her over the boy's head. You look exhausted. Been working. His concern appeared completely genuine. Everything about him felt completely genuine. That was the problem. The most dangerous lies always did. 3 separate crises hit the company before noon. banking restrictions, regulatory pressure, media manipulation, simultaneous, coordinated. Someone was accelerating. The war had entered its final phase. By afternoon, Minnie requested a meeting. No executives, no security, no performance. She almost refused, then accepted. They sat across from each other in a private room, and he dropped a file onto the table. Without speaking, she opened it. Her pulse shifted immediately. The names inside matched names from her own private investigation. Same shell companies, same financial channels, same intermediaries. 2 separate investigations, months of work, same targets. Neither had trusted the other enough to speak. The bitter irony of that sat between them. Like a third presence in the room, Minnie leaned back slowly. Someone wants us fighting each other. I know. While they move freely. She already understood the design. What she didn't yet understand was the depth of it. Then the emergency message arrived. Her investigator had secured the missing link. The final piece tonight, location attached. She stood immediately. Minnie frowned. She grabbed her coat. You want the truth? She moved toward the door. Then come. Convoy moved through the city under a sky that felt too quiet. The ambush came from both sides, simultaneously, vehicles, weapons, masked men who moved like people with a deadline. The firefight was fierce and brief. When it ended, one attacker remained, alive, bleeding, shaking. He lasted less than 3 minutes, then broke completely. Names, payments, orders, contacts, the poisoning, the leaks, the scandals, the media campaign, the threat against her son, all of it. Then one final name left his mouth. Jun's silence swallowed the room. Zuri's voice came out barely above a whisper. No. The attacker nodded frantically. He planned everything. The trusted employee, the comforter, the man her son called by name every single morning, the snake. Back in the city, inside a warehouse that Jun had chosen himself, he sat waiting, not restrained, not afraid, waiting. Zuri stepped forward. Tell me it's not you. He looked at her with the patience of someone who had rehearsed this moment. It depends on what you believe I am. Minnie moved closer. Jun exhaled. I didn't start this, but I finished it. You threatened my child. He didn't deny it. You came into my home. Still nothing. Then something beneath his composure finally cracked. I wanted you to feel what people like me feel when we lose everything. His voice hardened. Powerful people fall forward. They land softly. They forget. He took one step closer. I wanted you to remember. Security pulled him away. He didn't fight, just kept his eyes on her, as though even being taken away was still part of something he had planned. Then he was gone. Weeks later, the evidence dismantled everything he had built against her. Her name cleared, her empire stabilized. Son safe. But nobody celebrated, because surviving betrayal doesn't feel like winning. It feels like standing in a room where something used to be. That evening, Zuri stood in her garden. Minnie approached, stopped beside her, neither touched, neither moved closer from across the grass. Her son ran toward them, stopped, looked up at both of them, then smiled, the way children do when the world feels exactly as it should. Dad, then turned. Mom. Words, carrying everything neither adult had managed to say. The sun continued its descent. The city quieted behind them. The war no longer visible, only what remained. And for the first time in 3 years, what remained felt like dramatic enough to begin something with, if this story made you feel everything. Subscribe, because the next chapter of Zuri's life begins somewhere nobody saw coming, and you will not want to miss the first second of it.